1 minute ago, courtroom erupts. After Will Smith reveals how Diddy forced to sleep with him, viewer discretion is strongly advised. What follows is intended solely for educational and entertainment purposes. This is a word-for-word recount of testimony from the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, as reported by Inner City Press. No one anticipated his arrival. The courtroom buzzed with restrained tension, attention locked on the upcoming witness. Then suddenly, the rear doors opened and Will Smith entered. Audible gasps swept the room. Even the judge froze. There had been no announcement, no statement. Just Will stepping forward alone. Up until that moment, he'd remained quiet. His name swirling in tabloid headlines, leaked transcripts, and disturbing whispered recordings deemed too graphic for public release. But something had shifted. Perhaps it was the constant speculation. Maybe it was betrayal by people he once called friends. Or maybe it was hearing that audio behind closed doors. Whatever it was, Will had had enough. He wasn't appearing as a star. He was speaking as a man who had witnessed too much and stayed silent too long. And what he was about to say no one in that courtroom was ready for. Because what he revealed about Diddy, about the parties, the coercion and the fear, wasn't merely explosive. It was a warning. It started like any other day at Diddy's trial. Whispers floated among the press. Lawyers murmured strategies waiting for the scheduled witness. Then the side doors opened and Will Smith appeared alone, without a team, without a lawyer, without fanfare. Instantly the room changed. Silence fell. Some thought it was a mistake. Others assumed a publicity stunt. But the way Will moved, deliberate, composed, stripped of his Fresh Prince charisma, told them this was real. The judge arched an eyebrow. Diddy, lounging smugly at the defense table, tensed. Will walked straight to the witness stand. He avoided all eye contact, not even a glance at Diddy. "I wasn't called here," Will began. "I asked if I could speak." The judge gave permission. And from that moment, everything changed. What Will disclosed hadn't been posted on any gossip blog. It wasn't part of a viral leak. It was something that had haunted him for years, something that had started at a party no one was ever meant to talk about. "I've kept this inside a long time," he said. "I've smiled on carpets, accepted trophies, acted in stories about courage and honor. But none of that erased what I saw, what I went through, and who orchestrated it." He turned ever so slightly toward Diddy. "You did. It began," he said, "like countless Hollywood nights with an invitation. A mutual contact he'd worked with extended it. It was framed as a celebration Diddy's birthday. Just music mingling, nothing extreme. He'd been to those before, so he didn't question it. But as soon as he arrived, he sensed something wasn't right. A mansion high in the hills, black SUVs at the gate, heavy security. The moment he stepped inside, they took his phone. That alone should have been the first warning. They said it was about privacy, Will recalled. But it felt like something else, like they didn't want anything leaving that house. Inside, the lighting was low. The music was odd, ambient, hypnotic, unsettling. No visible cameras, but mirrors were everywhere, making it feel like someone was always watching. After a few drinks and small talk, Diddy approached. He smiled and said, "Now you're part of the family." But that smile, it wasn't friendly, Will recalled. It was possessive. He followed Diddy to a private room, expecting a business discussion. But what he witnessed shook him. There were people, performing. Men. Women. Some I recognized, others looked frighteningly young. Some watched like it was a show. And Diddy. He was laughing. Like it was normal. He paused, swallowed. I didn't know how to leave. And that was the point. Once you're in, you're in. A few days after that night, Will received a phone call. It came from a blocked number. The voice on the other end simply said, "Hope you had fun, Fresh Prince," and then hung up. At first he dismissed it as an odd prank until a plain envelope showed up at his office. Inside was a flash drive. He hesitated but eventually plugged it in. What he saw was footage from the party. Himself slouched on a couch, clearly out of it. He couldn't remember being in that state, but there he was, laughing detached. Behind the camera he heard Diddy's voice saying, "That's how we keep him." The fear that gripped him in that moment was unlike anything he'd felt before. I realized then I wasn't just invited to that party, Will testified. I was inducted. That marked the beginning of something far more sinister: manipulation. Invitations to more parties followed. Will declined. Then roles he had been in discussions for suddenly gone. Industry contacts he'd worked with for years stopped returning calls. Rumors began circulating online that he was unstable, that he was cheating, that he was hiding something. I knew what it was, he said. It was pressure. Diddy never needed to say it aloud. The message was clear. Peace came at the price of silence. So for years, Will stayed quiet. He smiled through interviews, laughed off gossip, focused on work. But every time someone else came forward, Cassie Dawn, Richard, even Meek Mill's name surfacing, he questioned his own silence. If they were speaking, why wasn't I? He looked across the courtroom. Diddy didn't just derail people's careers, he said. He made them afraid to tell the truth, and that, Will explained, was what ultimately brought him to court. He looked at the jury, leaned into the mic. It wasn't just about a video. That was the leash. From that point on, Will said everything he did felt tied to invisible strings. Agents would get calls, invitations would come, offers, meetings, projects. But if he said no to a Diddy event, soon after something would go wrong. A project that had been greenlit would be abruptly dropped. This wasn't a rare occurrence, it became routine. Diddy didn't have to make threats. He had people, bloggers, PR reps, producers. He knew who to call, how to make problems appear out of nowhere, and how to make opportunities disappear just as fast. Will detailed a particular incident in 2013. He'd been in final talks for a global campaign with a major luxury brand. He had already shot the initial lookbook. Then, out of nowhere, they dropped him with no explanation. 2 weeks later, another invitation arrived from Diddy. Will declined again. And the phone started ringing. Gossip blogs began posting strangely specific stories, details only someone with insider access could know. It was psychological warfare, he said. You start questioning your own sanity, wondering if you're just paranoid. But then the pattern emerges. The punishment becomes obvious. Will told the court he wasn't alone. Other celebrities were enduring similar tactics. Some were still silent, some bound by contracts, others simply too afraid. Then he turned to Diddy. You didn't just collect people, he said. You own them. And everyone in the room understood exactly what he meant. Will didn't stop at discussing manipulation. He elaborated on how Diddy's control extended far beyond artists. It seeped into the very foundation of Hollywood. You couldn't step onto a major platform, Will said, without brushing up against someone he'd helped place there. He recalled a 2016 charity gala. Behind the scenes, he watched as influential figures from music, film, politics, and tech treated Diddy like the linchpin. Will described one streaming executive handing Diddy a USB drive and whispering, "Only you get the final cut." Will didn't specify what was on that drive, but for him, it confirmed his fears. Diddy wasn't merely networking. He was acting as a gatekeeper. He began noticing other public figures behaving oddly submissive around Diddy, laughing too hard, yielding in conversation, trying to stay in his favor. They weren't friends, Will said. They were survivors. One reason Will had stayed silent for so long, he admitted, was fear of being blacklisted. But over time, he realized something devastating he already was. There was no formal blacklist, he explained, just whispers, doubt, closed doors. The only reason he remained in the public eye at all, he said, was because his audience wouldn't let him fade away. That was the part Diddy couldn't control the people. Over time, Will's perspective shifted. He began revisiting old moments, footage, photographs, press junkets. And what he saw stunned him. Diddy's influence had always been there, not always in person, but always present in power. Then came the breaking point. Will's voice deepened, slowed. I stayed silent for 20 years, he said. Told myself it wasn't real, or that it didn't happen to me. But then he started hearing rumors about secret audio tapes being played in court. At first he didn't believe them, until a trusted contact called him. They said, "Will, you're on one of those tapes. They played it yesterday. People are talking." He described the feeling like the floor had vanished beneath him. He hadn't known such a recording even existed. But once the possibility set in, everything clicked. The party, the blackout, the envelope, the anonymous calls. It had all been part of a machine, and he had been one of its victims. The final blow wasn't fear. It was shame. I realized that if I didn't speak now, he said, my silence would define me. He thought of his children, his grandchildren. He couldn't let this legacy linger. So he picked up the phone himself, called the prosecution. I'm ready, he told them. Ask me anything. He looked at the jury. I wasn't just manipulated, I was used, filmed, played. Then turning to Diddy, his tone sharpened. And you knew exactly what you were doing. Will paused before continuing. He closed his eyes, bracing himself to relive something deeply buried. When the prosecution asked if he wanted to listen to the recording, I hesitated, he said. But he knew he had to hear it. The playback happened behind closed doors. No jury, no press. Just the judge, the attorneys, and Will. I heard myself, he said, laughing. But it wasn't real. It was empty, slurred. I wasn't just drunk, I'd been drugged. He described the background noise, low music, muffled voices, cheers erupting occasionally. Then he heard Diddy, clearly, saying, "That's how we break them in." Then they said his name. They were saying my name while doing things I don't even want to describe. He paused. The courtroom was silent. It wasn't just humiliating, Will said. It stripped away my humanity. His voice cracked. For the first time during his testimony, he looked down, gathered himself. I never gave consent to be filmed. I never agreed to any of it. But Diddy recorded it, kept it, maybe to use it, maybe just to have it. Will explained how for years he'd experienced sudden anxiety when certain names were mentioned, panic attacks during seemingly ordinary interviews. He now realized those were trauma responses. I wasn't crazy, he said. I was remembering something I didn't want to remember. Hearing the audio had forced him to face it all. The grooming, the manipulation, the betrayal by those who stood by in silence. What haunted me most, he said, wasn't what I heard. It was what I didn't remember. He looked at the jury. If you want to know how powerful Diddy is, ask yourself this. How can someone like me be silenced for 20 years and not even realize it? By the time Will's words reached the public, the damage was already done. The courtroom footage had gone viral before the bailiff could even call for order. Hashtags lit up. Wand, Will speaks, Josh, freak off tape, Josh, Diddy file. And for the first time, people saw Will Smith not as a polished celebrity, but as a survivor. I knew things would get ugly once I spoke, Will said, but I didn't expect it to move this fast. Within 24 hours of testifying, he lost 2 brand deals. Another studio froze promotion on a film already completed. But Will said none of that mattered. I'd already lost something more important a long time ago. My voice. Then the calls started coming in. Quiet ones. Messages from actors, directors, producers. Some offered thanks. Others warned him. "You have no idea who you just declared war on," one message read. Another said, "You've made yourself radioactive." Will mention several names, careful not to reveal specifics due to legal constraints. But when the prosecution asked about individuals like Kevin Hart, Meek Mill, and Lucian Grange, he nodded. "This isn't just about Diddy," he said. "It's an entire industry built on silence." He admitted that more footage of him might surface, that attempts would be made to discredit him. "They'll call me bitter, say I'm covering something. But let me ask if I'm lying. Why did I wait this long? Why now when I have everything to lose?" He ended with a single line that stopped the room cold. Sometimes the truth comes late, but it still hits like thunder. For his closing statement, the judge granted Will permission to address Diddy directly. Will stepped down from the witness stand, moved a few feet closer, and locked eyes with him. "You built an empire out of manipulation," he said. "You called it success. You called it culture. You called it love. But what you really built was fear." Diddy didn't respond. He sat frozen, his lawyer whispering in his ear. Will didn't flinch. "I saw what you did to those women. I saw what you did to me. I heard what you said when you thought no one was listening. You destroyed people for sport." Then from his pocket, Will pulled out an old photograph. "This was me in 2004, right before the first party." He held it up. "That man, I haven't seen him in years." Turning to the jury, he said, "If you think this is just about me or Cassie or one night in some mansion, then you're missing the bigger picture. This is about a system, an entire network of power designed to silence truth. And if we don't dismantle it, it will continue." Facing Diddy one last time, Will said, "You once said nobody parties like Diddy. Well, nobody lies like you either." He returned to the stand, gathered his things, and exited the courtroom. He didn't look back. Diddy remained motionless, pale, hands trembling. For the first time in decades, he wasn't in control of the room. As Will left, he didn't address the media. No wave, no gesture. He simply walked out the front door, head high, shoulders heavy with 20 years of trauma. When later asked if he felt relief, he reportedly replied, "Relief isn't the word. It's just finished." But outside the courthouse, the fallout had just begun. Hollywood went into quiet crisis mode. Executives called emergency meetings. Agencies paused deals. Studios that once celebrated Will now faced hard questions. Those who once called him family issued generic statements of concern and support for truth. Behind closed doors, PR firms activated damage control. Internal memos advised clients to distance themselves from Sean Combs. But online, the internet wasn't waiting. Old clips resurfaced Diddy with powerful people. Parties where no one seemed at ease. Interviews where celebrities danced around his name. Fans began pointing out footage from the Fresh Prince era, saying Will's smile always seemed to hide something. The outrage was immediate. People were furious not just that it happened, but that it was ignored for so long. And Will, he didn't retreat. The day after his testimony, he posted a single photo, a black and white shot of himself from 1993 on a film set looking up at the sun. The caption, "He didn't know what was coming, but he made it through. I'm proud of him. No hashtags, no tags, just that." The reaction was overwhelming. Millions shared the image. Thousands commented. Survivors, especially men, flooded the post with stories of their own. "You gave us a voice," one wrote. "If Will can speak so, can we?" Meanwhile, inside the courtroom, Diddy's team scrambled. Rumors spread more subpoenas were on the way, not just to artists and assistants, but to executives, distributors, even media conglomerates. Will's testimony hadn't just been personal, it cracked the dam. More tapes were rumored to exist, some audio, some video, featuring other public figures. They were sealed by the court for now. But insiders whispered that if any of it leaked, it would shake the industry to its core. Will didn't rush back to work. He declined interviews, canceled appearances. But he wasn't hiding. Sources close to him said he was spending time with his children, focusing on healing. "He's not pretending anymore," a friend told Variety. "For the first time in years, he's really healing." Before adjourning court that day, the judge made a statement that caught even the reporters off guard. "What we heard today," the judge said, "was more than testimony. It was a reckoning. The final image wasn't of Will, or even Diddy. It was the jury, silent, motionless, processing the weight of everything they'd just witnessed. And in that silence, one thing was certain. The era of silence was over. The silence was broken, but the echo hadn't stopped. In the days that followed Will Smith's testimony, it wasn't just headlines that erupted. It was trust, the kind of trust that had held the machinery of Hollywood together. A quiet agreement. Don't look too closely. Don't ask too much. Don't name names. That pact was shattered now. Studios scrambled to audit past collaborations. Talent agencies began quietly reviewing contracts, NDAs buried settlements. Some publicists resigned outright, unwilling to manage clients they suspected were complicit. Legal teams prepared for a second wave, one not just about Diddy, but about the rot he represented. Inside record labels and media companies, tension ran high. Whispers of other parties, other drives, and other victims grew louder. Assistants and handlers began requesting legal protection. One executive was overheard in a private call. "If those tapes get out, we don't survive this quarter." But it wasn't just the industry reacting. It was the people. Social media became a battleground for truth and backlash. Survivors began sharing stories, some vague, some detailed, all carrying the same undertone. "It happened to me, too." Hashtags trended globally. Not only Zamach Will speaks, but Uwais break the party. End the silence, and perhaps most tellingly, Diddy was the start. Podcasts that once covered celebrity gossip pivoted overnight into investigations. YouTubers analyzed old footage frame by frame. Fans rewatched decades of interviews with new eyes catching nervous laughs, veiled comments, and moments that now felt like cries for help. "I used to think he was just eccentric," one viewer wrote under a viral clip. "Now I see fear," but it wasn't all vindication. Will faced the cost of speaking in real time. Former collaborators distanced themselves. One international magazine pulled a cover story. A streaming platform postponed the release of a series he had produced. Quiet whispers resurfaced, reframed. Why did he wait so long? Isn't this just revenge? What else is he hiding? It didn't matter to Will. He told the truth, said a source close to his family. And for the first time, he can look his kids in the eyes without wondering what they'll find online. Meanwhile, support swelled. Oprah posted a rare personal message. Ava DuVernay released a statement of solidarity. An anonymous donation to a survivors fund named 20 Years Quiet raised over $1.2 million in 48 hours. People weren't just reacting, they were rallying. And in Diddy's camp, the walls were closing in. Multiple former employees reached out to legal counsel. 2 former bodyguards were subpoenaed. One assistant deleted all her social media and hired private security. Rumors of federal involvement surged. Reporters camped outside Diddy's properties. Drones hovered over his recording studio. Former allies turned unavailable. His empire, once built on charisma, control, and spectacle, now trembled under the weight of exposure. Then, an unexpected turn. An unnamed male actor contacted the prosecution. He said he had evidence, footage, documents, and names, but he wanted safety first. The prosecution filed a motion for protective status. Whispers suggested this actor had been to more than one of the parties Will described. He wasn't ready to speak in court, but he was ready to confirm what Will had risked everything to say. The dominoes were falling. In a late-night segment, a well-known talk show host put it bluntly, "This is not just a scandal, it's a system collapse, and we're only on page 1. What came next wasn't a sequel. It was a reckoning in motion.